Hey guys, in this video we're going to be talking about the evidence or the data that scientists have that says evolution is a theory that we can support. Okay, so we're going to talk about 5 different pieces of data. We can see them on here: organic molecules, energy processes, universal genetic codes, fossil evidence, and similar structures. So those are the 5 things that we're going to be hitting on today. As a brief review, remember, scientists believe that all living things started as a single-cell organism that we call the LUCA, or the last universal common ancestor. And when we take a look at that on an evolutionary tree, the LUCA will be all the way down here at the very beginning, and then everything evolved from that. So scientists say, like, hey, if you take a look at all living things are made of the similar organic compounds or molecules. They're all made of carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. Okay, Cody likes perfect nachos. Oh, they're made of those 4. So they think, like, well, if we're all made of the same thing, we must all have evolved from the same thing as well. All living things use similar energy processes. So, for example, all living things do cellular respiration, whether they do glycolysis or they do Krebs cycle mixed with electron transport chain. All living things do that complicated process. All plants do photosynthesis. So when we talk about the light reaction and the common cycle, all plants do that. So scientists say it's not a coincidence that this is taking place. They must have all evolved from some common ancestors, that they all do the same exact energy processes. Now, scientists point back to the endosymbiotic theory, which states that early prokaryotes ate other prokaryotes to become the first eukaryotes. And the things that they ate became the first mitochondria and the first chloroplasts. And that's how we came out with the same energy processes and our first eukaryotes. Now, all living things use the same method of storing the genetic code. All of them use DNA. They all use A, T, C's, and G's. So everything from giant elephants down to the smallest bacteria uses A, T, C's, and G's to store its genetic code. Again, scientists say this can't be a coincidence. It has to be something in which we all evolved from a similar species. So here we can actually take a look at the DNA and compare the human DNA to other things like chimpanzee DNA, mouse DNA, chicken DNA, and fruit fly DNA. We share 98% of our DNA with chimpanzees, meaning we have a common ancestor that's kind of recent. Maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, we evolved from a common ancestor with chimpanzees as well. Okay, we have a common ancestor with mouses, or mice, I should say, that may be 1 million or so years ago. And chickens even more, and fruit flies even more, further in the past. All living things create proteins in the same way. Remember the ideas of transcription and translation? All living things do transcription and translation. They are complicated processes, and scientists say it can't be a coincidence that all living things do them. We have fossil evidence. This fossil evidence shows us the common ancestors, some of the common ancestors that are now extinct, that no longer are around on Earth. Scientists also study comparative anatomy. Now, if there are structures that are similar, so if we actually take a look at the structures of these forearms here, these are called homologous structures. Homo means the same, meaning they are set up in a similar way. So even though all 4 of these organisms have different functions, they all have bone structures that are similar. And scientists say, hey, they must have evolved from a similar ancestor at some point. Here we can see analogous structures. Now this is a little different. Analogous means that the structures are not the same. So take a look at the bird and the bat. They do not have the same structures in their wings, but they both are evolved for flight. Okay, so they evolved separately from each other. They did not evolve from a common ancestor. So analogous, same function, different structure. So analogous, different structure. We also have things called vestigial structures. These are leftover structures from a time in the past, from a common ancestor. For example, humans have a tailbone. Whales have a pelvic bone. They don't even walk, but they have a pelvic bone. These are leftover things from evolution of the past.